Hey Swifters, welcome back to another race analysis video, and today I'm doing something a little different, and this time I've got a race video sent in from Stefan Temescu, who is a rider for BYT and now races for BL13 on Zwift. He is a very accomplished rider, and he is 14 years old, weighs 55 kilograms, races for BL13 on Zwift, and his specialty is climbing and time trials. His FTP is 291, and his Zwift level is level 31. So across the board, some very impressive stats from this young rider, and we're going to see him race in Category A here, because he is Category A with that massive FTP of 291 watts, which actually equates to almost 5 watts per kilo. Let's get into it. So taking a look at this race, this is the D-Pack Climbers Epic Series, and this is a really tough race, and I've seen this on the event calendar. I've always been way too scared to try this, because you can see just based off of this start, it's very hard, because you can see that they're already going up the Epic KOM, which is a really tough climb, especially at this pace that these Category A riders are going to be going at. You can see that it's mostly Category A and B riders now at this point. Some of the B riders are starting to drop, but the stronger ones will hang on for quite a bit longer. And you see we've got another 15-year-old here, JPV. So take a look at that rider, because he's also flying up this climb along with Stefan. And you can see that he's on the Tron bike. Very smart choice for this course, because you don't actually want to go with an all-out climbing setup. Despite the name, it's called a climbing race, but there really is quite a bit of descending and quite a bit of flats that you really want to have that Tron bike to give you that aerodynamic advantage in parts of the course. Now, as Stefan goes up this climb, you can see that he is pushing pretty hard, pushing around 300 watts, which is around 5 to 5.5 watts per kilo. So that's just how much power you need to be putting out to stick with this group. He's not on the front, he's not pushing, and that's actually a very smart choice. He's playing this very smart, because I'm assuming I know that he is a very strong rider, and he knows Zwift craft pretty well, because I've seen him race quite a few times on Zwift. I've seen his results where he's always in the top 10. He's always getting those top finishes, because he knows the game, he knows the racing well, because he does race quite a bit IRL too. So you can see that he does drift to the front a bit there, but he catches himself and he goes back to sitting in the draft and making sure that he is saving as much energy as possible, because this is not where you want to be spending your energy. He still has 32 kilometers to go, and they're only 11 kilometers through, so 1/4 of the race is almost done. And you can see that he's just drafting there, which is exactly what you want to be doing at this point in the race. You don't want to be spending too much energy on the front trying to push the pace. Despite the fact that there are 2 riders up ahead, they don't really stand a chance on the descent against this large of a group. So in this situation, you really want to be drafting and letting the other riders do most of the work, even though there are riders off the front. So that's one of the mistakes that Stefan did make, but he is a very aggressive rider, so you can see that he's on the front right now. He's trying to bridge that gap, so he's not necessarily just trying to pull the group along with him. He committed to that move, and he really made sure that he wasn't just pulling them, but rather he was pushing the pace and trying to make his way to that next group. So that was smart, but then it also could have been a mistake if he was just pulling the group and simply letting them draft him. Whereas in this situation, he actually continued to push on, and he made sure that his surge was hard enough that the other riders could not follow, and that he could bridge that gap to move into the top 5. Now making his way up the radio tower at a insanely quick speed, and he is now flying up this climb. And you can see that there is still that jet rider there, RBD, who is around 17 seconds ahead. But then if you take a look at this is a really fast ascent, and having those other 2 riders with him is really going to help in the long run, because it will allow him to have someone to draft behind, so that he's not doing all the work, so that he can take turns, and you can kind of see that churning effect, which is what happens on Zwift descents. You can see that right here, puts it a small surge, but does not necessarily catch up to those riders. And now at this point, that jet rider, it has quite a bit of a lead, and they are now around 30 seconds ahead, which is looks like, sorry, that's 50 seconds, and he is just really grinding there. Jet Rider, I haven't quite seen the end of this yet, but I do, at this point in the race, I would assume that the Jet Rider can still be reeled back, but it's starting to be a little unlikely considering that there are no groups left out on the field, because if there was a group, I'd say that the Jet Rider is definitely caught within the span of a few minutes because of just how quickly groups roll on Zwift. But you can see that there really is no group, and Stefan is with one other rider right here, two other now. That is JPV, and that's going to be J Cox. And you can see that the other rider, D Demi from the Netherlands, is also just up the road, around 30 seconds ahead, and they're starting to close that gap from the Jet Rider just slightly though, but I don't think it's going to be enough in the end to bring him all the way back. So you all just saw something really big happen. The rest of the Category A riders who were behind him, they swarmed him and they caught up. So now he has a pretty big group around him. And in the end, at the start, when you first see those riders closing that gap, you might get a little worried thinking that you could have gotten top 3 if you had just stayed away. But really, those riders are going to be the ones helping you in the end, because now he has people to draft behind. He does not need to be pushing 300 watts to keep up the pace that he was holding earlier. So overall, having those riders catch was a pretty good decision, and rather than trying to fend them off and continue to fight, because a group against one solo rider, the group is almost always going to win, especially in Zwift. So now you can see that Jet Rider is now over 2 minutes ahead, and this is going to be an incredibly hard one to bring back, and I don't think it's going to be possible, especially taking into account that the rider's pushing over 4 watts per kilo at almost all times, which is just incredibly insane. And I'm going to bring up his profile real quick, and I'm going to show that on the screen to show you just how strong that rider is and how high their power is in order to stay away from these groups of riders. You can see that this now has around 5 or 6 riders with him, so he is still in contention for top 10 and even top 3, but he will need to beat out these other riders if he does want to move his way into 3rd. You can see that he's still playing this pretty smart. He's making sure that he's not on the front pulling, but he's still making sure that the pace stays high and making sure that the group does what they need to do in order to stick on pace to eventually catch up to that rider who is up the road. You can see that he's just making a small move here, just trying to bridge that gap. You don't want to let the gaps open up too much, because then you'll find yourself putting in pretty big surges, especially on a climb like the Epic KOM. JPV here putting in a huge surge of over 6 watts per kilo, and Stefan and JPV are now together. They've ridden away once again, and they are now helping each other, kind of taking turns on the front. I'm assuming there's not a whole lot of coordination in this attack, but I know that they both know that they can still bridge this up to get 2nd and 3rd place, but it will involve teamwork and working together, and both these riders likely race outdoors. I know Stefan definitely races outdoors, and he actually rode for an IRL team for quite a while, so he has that experience on the road where you actually work together, whereas on Zwift it's kind of like just sitting there as a game of cat and mouse constantly, where nobody wants to be on the front pulling and everyone's just waiting for the other rider, and that's most of the reason why Zwift breakaways don't normally work. But you see these riders are working pretty well together, and they're making sure that pace stays high. You can see that French rider just catches up, but still all the other riders are out of reach. 10 seconds, 11 seconds, 15 seconds behind. They're likely not going to be catching up, and Stefan is now riding away with that French rider. JPV has dropped quite a bit, and you can see that they are really closing that gap from that Netherlands rider who is 52 seconds ahead. So at this point it is still possible, but with 2 kilometers left, it's starting to look less and less likely that they are going to catch that rider. Now, one of the big things about the longer races is that you do not want to blow up, and this is the worst place possible to blow up and completely lose all the strength that you have earlier, and that's exactly what happens to D Denny. You can see that the Netherlands rider just completely flies off the back and ends up sprinting, but Stefan doesn't quite match that sprint, and I don't think he quite saw that coming, that the D Denny was actually going to come back and just fly right by him. That's hard to see when you literally fly by the rider a few seconds earlier, but Stefan, overall an amazing effort to come in 3rd place. So let's just take a look there. You just saw that Netherlands rider just went right off the back and is actually found 3 seconds off the back. but then puts in a massive surge of over 10 watts per kilo in order to just fly right by and just pip Stefan on the line. So you can actually see just how smart Stefan rode that one. You can see 4.3 watt per kilo average, whereas Denny had a 4.8 watt per kilo average, and the rider behind him, Guyot, had a 4.7 watt per kilo average. And Stefan did this all while having an overall lower power output, and that's just simply amazing liftcraft, and it just making sure that you use your power in the right places, and that is something that Stefan really did well in this situation. Huge shout out to Stefan for sending out this video so that I can do a bit of a voiceover and commentary and give them some tips and tricks along the way. So thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please stay tuned. I have a really exciting video coming out towards the end of June, and it's something that I've been planning and working on for quite a while now. So thank you for watching, ride on, and see you all next time.